Hello, my name is Bruce McMullen and welcome to this, the third in the series of PowerPoints to Ponder presentations. What follows are my thoughts on lesson planning, and it provides a scaffold for you to develop your skills. So why is lesson planning so important to teachers? Well, lesson plans can be looked at in many ways as a prescribed chore, an example of your ability to prepare, a means of focusing thoughts. Some would say a waste of time. Some suggest a timeline is incorporated. For you, however, it is mandatory, and the assignments you are attempting give you real experience in constructing a working lesson plan or two. Here is an example. So all good teachers plan their lessons. Anybody who intends to deliver information to an audience writes a speech. You are no different. You're delivering opportunities for learning, and hence you require a sort of a basic script. The difference here is that you do include a timeline, resources, and feedback opportunities for learners to indicate to you what they have gleaned from your lesson. So in preparing their lessons, sometimes really good teachers do it on their way to school, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes on the run when an idea strikes them for a follow-up lesson or an extension or remediation session. A good lesson plan doesn't guarantee a good lesson, but as it says there, it decreases the chance of it being a bad lesson. It contributes significantly to avoiding disasters. We all have them, but at least a good lesson plan minimizes the danger. A good plan needs to be flexible, able to go with the flow, incorporating plans B, C, and D in case something goes wrong. Sometimes the whole plan will need to be put on hold, and other times you'll branch off on a newly relevant tangent that is still keeping the purpose of the lesson as the central focus. Lessons rarely go according to plan. And a plan is a tool, and every plan should be sharpened. Every plan should be evaluated, just in case you need to use it again. So, what does a lesson plan do? What does it contain? Well, firstly, it helps the teacher clarify in their mind the purpose of the lesson. Why are you teaching this? It links your goals or aims, in this case, to an outcome or series of outcomes. Secondly, it identifies those outcomes that you want to have the learners demonstrate at the end of the lesson. Thirdly, it allows you to list the available resources. Books, internet sites, YouTube videos, worksheets, experiments, equipment, and also safety issues should they arise. A good lesson runs smoothly, and hence it requires a timeline. So a good lesson plan is a guide of what to do and when to do it within the time frame of the lesson. An underrated contributing factor is that a good lesson plan will involve everyone in the class. And when everyone in the class is involved, behaviour management becomes controlled. When the learner is engaged, they want to learn more and have less desire or motivation or boredom as a trigger to misbehave. So I'm giving you some tips on planning. First of all, you've got to consider what you are going to teach. Well, most of you will be given a scope and sequence document that should define what you teach and when you teach it. Most of these documents are content or topic based. Once you've identified the topic, then you've got to dig out the syllabus and work out what outcomes could be addressed during the topic, and remember to incorporate a range of key learning area outcomes if possible. Now you'll note that the New South Wales syllabus is outcomes based, and most modern syllabi specify outcomes to be achieved at or by a particular phase in a learner's education or schooling. In other words, it describes what students should be able to do or demonstrate at the completion of each stage. So outcomes are driving the lesson process. So with an outcome-based syllabus, in preparing any lesson, a teacher should first of all work out how to find out what the learner already knows. There is no point teaching something that they already know. That also leads to boredom and ultimately mischief. A number of tools can be employed. You've got concept maps, discussions, questionnaires. Brainstorms are a favourite. You can pre-test and post-test to make a good comparison. You can ask your learners to draw pictures or write a composition. All of these things tell you where the learner is at the moment. Once you've identified the prior knowledge, you can then go ahead and look to consider the outcomes, and these are derived from the syllabus. You can flick through the syllabus or search the syllabus as a PDF document to find particular references. If we were doing a unit, for example, on the water cycle, we could search the syllabus for water or storms or cycles as the active words. And interestingly, water and cycle comes up as an outcome statement at ST3-9ES and has linked to it all of those other outcome statements. The difference being the bold ones are content statements. Next, it is most important to deconstruct the lesson. Deconstruct the prescribed outcomes and rewrite them in more simple and achievable and measurable lesson outcomes. In other words, at the conclusion of this lesson, learners will be able to, for example, list the names of cyclones in different parts of the world, or describe the effects of cyclones, or identify on a map cyclone-prone areas of Australia. You know, this is an extension of that idea of dealing with the water cycle. Once you have done that, it is a simple matter to find out how you're going to know if the learners have achieved the prescribed and the desired ones, the extra ones that you're getting from other key learning areas. This process is the design of your assessment strategies, and it really should be a celebration of learning. The fifth thing to do is consider guidance. You've identified your prior learning and misconceptions and previous understanding. You did that in point 2. And you're aware of the desired outcomes. Well, it is then that you list the lesson activities, in other words, the learning strategies, the activities, the experiments, the videos they're going to watch, the lettergrams they're going to complete, all of those activities that will enable you to measure their achievement of the desired outcomes. These are the activities and strategies that make up the body of your lesson. The sixth thing to do is to recognize that you have a class of children, not one child. And everybody learns differently, has different interests, different experiences, so can come at the same topic from different directions. It is therefore essential that you provide choice and a range of different activities, and this is where the theories of Gardner and Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives become important for you to be experienced or have an experience with or knowledge of. Also, be prepared to negotiate group work and the construction of groups and the assessment strategies that those groups and individuals may choose to demonstrate their achievement. This social interaction type thing with groups is a reflection of the social constructivist point of view first proposed by Vygotsky many years ago, in fact last century, at the beginning of. You also need to recognize that different students will have different rates and levels of learning at the completion of your topic. So for that you need to have extension and remediation activities so that you're able to define the expectations with the individual, and at the end of the unit they are happy that what they are doing is reflective of their ability. There is a sample lesson plan. It contains the basic elements: the date, the stage in the class, the topic, and the lesson title. It's good to put a catchy title in there. When you write something up on your whiteboard or smartboard, or if you're ancient like me, or blackboard, you are able to catch the attention of the students. You need to identify, as I've said, the syllabus goals, aims, and objectives, and from there construct lesson outcomes. You've identified the prior knowledge, understanding, experience, and misconceptions to be put into that box, and even you can say how you got there. Now that can be done in a previous lesson to set the scene. That's where you link to previous lessons so that it's a continuum of learning. You identify and list the resources and the materials and the safety hazards, and then in the body of the lesson you define an outcome, all the activities you'll do, and how you intend to close it. That is where you can link it to your next lesson, and also where you set homework tasks, etc. Remember, assessment is extremely important. You need to list how the learning will be assessed. You can use formative and summative assessment tasks. More of those on those in a minute. You also, as I said, need to identify extension activities for those that finish before the bulk of the class, but also remediation activities, things that will enable the learner to revisit the concept being explored from a different point of view. Most importantly, at the end of the lesson, as I said earlier, you need to sharpen it. What would you do differently if you had to teach it again tomorrow is the question that you should ask yourself. So, you have linked the outcomes defined by the syllabus and the assessment to prove achievement to your lesson plan. Note the hint about a curriculum approach. Identifying outcomes in other key learning areas is a valuable exercise. So can we have another quick look at these elements? What do I teach? Well, you teach what is required of you from the scope and sequence statement, which is often called a program. You teach toward the achievement of syllabus outcomes. You use those syllabus outcomes to define lesson outcomes, the short-term outcome. Then you need to consider why you are teaching what you are doing. And if you say, because the syllabus says so, well, then we have problems. You teach something to make it relevant to the learner. Now that sometimes means you've got to remember what it was like to be 7 years of age if you're teaching second class. But it is important to identify how it is relevant to the learner. It could be topical. It could have happened yesterday. It could be fascinating and interesting. So decide how it is relevant to the learner. Convince them of that, because you know yourself, if you want to know about something, you will find a way to do just that, to learn about it. And different things appeal to different people. Hence the previous reference to the need to have a range of approaches and finding relevance from different points of view. And the good teachers, when they get good at it, are able to make the daily news relevant, make it exciting, make it engaging, and make it immediate. So, how do we teach it? Well, that's where you decide the activities that are going to be employed during the course of the lesson. You work out if you need individual activities or small group activities to encourage that social interaction. Do you have first-hand activities where the learner is engaged in a activity where they are experiencing rather than sharing a previous opportunity to learn, like as in a video or something similar? Should the activity be hands-on? Do you need to book the library to make a research-based opportunity for learning? Are you promoting literacy skills throughout your lesson? Have you thought about negotiating with the learners what they'd like to know, how they'd like to know it, and how will they know they have got there? Now make sure your assessment tasks are directly linked to the syllabus outcomes. You have links with other lessons, previous lessons and future lessons. Those links can be defined by the assignment of homework. You should review every lesson once you've finished it and at the beginning of the next one. You give the students something to look forward to. But often if you use quizzes in a formative sense, they can be exciting. As you have already attempted your science knowledge audit, you recognise your individual strengths and weaknesses. You also choose the activities, and you choose to identify safety issues and other aspects of the lesson which could be important. When we think about assessment, we need to think in detail about the type of assessment we're going to employ. I will present another PowerPoint presentation on assessment, so I would recommend that to you. But to summarise, formative assessment is what we call assessment for learning. It informs the learner of their progress, and it also informs the teacher of the learner's progress. No marks or grades are awarded for this. But in summative, that is where we are assessing the learning itself, and that is where we do award grades and marks. Such things as tests and quizzes and assignments and reports, and in your case rates of wiki participation, your writing and research skills are all allocated grades which can then lead to marks. A very important question is, can I do it better or more effectively? You'll have some lessons that you'll put in your bag of tricks. That was really, really good. Others that you'll put in your bag of, I will never do this agains. Remembering, of course, that as your career grows, so will your skills, and you can take things out of the never to do again bag, dust it off, reconsider it with your newfound skills, and put it back into your bag of tricks to be drawn upon again and again. So you're constantly personally reflecting. You are also invited to seek feedback from your peers. Your colleagues are your most loyal and sometimes most frank of critics. Please don't be afraid to seek learner feedback. You'll notice that I seek feedback on these PowerPoints, but also our units are constantly monitored to seek your feedback as to how we may make it better. Feedback from the learner can be cruel, but it can also warm your heart with the nicest praise that these kids can give. Once again, there's that lesson plan. See how it is beginning to fit together. Is it easy? After several years, it is. And these tips and tricks are just a hint, a start for you to climb that process. Remembering, of course, that the best laid plans of mice and men can often come asunder. And Murphy's Law, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. And there are incidental things that can really drive you around the twist. You could be halfway through a wonderful activity with the kids where they're all engaged, and also all of a sudden a bomb scare, or a sporting activity, or it starts to rain and the buses have got to collect kids. All sorts of things can happen, but the really skillful teacher is the one that can take that in their stride, remember the purpose of the lesson, and get on with it. So thank you very much again for listening. I do hope that you will provide me with feedback. I can be contacted at bruce.mcmullen@une.edu.au. I look forward to talking to you again soon.